Okay, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. No white lightning for me. I'm still drinking coffee and trying to wake up.
All right.
Uh, I've been having trouble sleeping, so I've been taking my sleepy pills, except they leave me kind of groggy. So that's the trade-off. I need to find something that helps me get to sleep, but I don't wake up all
That's what the
groggy.
white lightning is for.
Yeah, except you said it helps you get to sleep, but then you don't get good sleep because you
No, you
don't.
don't get your cycles in as well.
Yeah.
What
Uh,
it does is it puts you in deep sleep and then you kind of stay there for too long and then you kind of overreact on the other end, in and out of light and REM and light and REM and light and REM, and you kind of wake up a lot.
okay. Well, I've I've got my brain working enough to have remembered what I wanted to talk about, and I got some tabs to share. But you wanted to talk about what's going on in East Palestine, uh,
Yeah,
Ohio, that is.
yeah, Palestine, Ohio. Briefly, I mean, it's not something either of our area of expertise, other than the fact that you can feel the hypocrisy flowing from it. But yeah, for those that aren't in the know, if you watch just the mainstream media, which I'm pretty sure none of our audience is in that camp, but
Yeah.
if you just happened to stumble upon us and thought the name was cool and clicked on the video, we're talking about East Palestine, Ohio, where a train derailed with lots of poisonous gases, and their solution to the problem to not let it leak into the earth was to burn it into the air. What could go wrong? And EPA is saying nothing to see here, everything's fine, but animals are dying and people are not healthy out there. And it's, I mean, these are hazards. Some of these chemicals were chemicals that were used in World War I for trench warfare. So, well, the burned version of them were ended up being that way. uh Vinyl chlorine, is that what I'm that's one of them that's coming to mind. that
I
does
don't
that
remember. I know
just
they used chlorine. They used chlorine gas. It was one of the gases they used.
Yeah.
If you go dig into it, and it's really nasty stuff because they determined after experimenting with it for a while that they used a combination of gases to get past the gas masks, and some of them were pretty nasty. They were specifically used because they would damage any exposed skin, or they would corrode the gas mask. They would damage the gas mask so that then the next wave of gas could get in and penetrate and get into your lungs and kill you. So it's nasty stuff.
Yeah, and apparently they don't even have any official testing done by the EPA or the government. They were using the railroad company's tests to say it's safe and clear. Kind of reminds you of another situation where we used a certain pharmaceutical company's test to say safe and effective, but that's
To
neither here nor there.
your point on the mainstream media, I pay attention to the news, more or less. Uh, less than I should, but more than I want to because I hate it. But this happened, I believe, on the 3rd of February, and it was like 10 days, 2 weeks before I heard about it. And the first I heard about it, um, I believe it was on the radio, someone making mention of why isn't Joe Biden going to East Palestine, and I thought, what's going on in Israel? That
Well,
was my first thought.
it was on Breaking Points really early because they have a segment where one of their other reporters, independent journalists, also has his own. It's like the Working Man podcast or something, and they specifically have railroad contacts that they talk with all the time.
Mm.
So it was right out the gate they were on it because he came forward and did his bit, and he had insiders that were at the railroad safety talking about all the shortcuts that have to be taken in order to meet everything they need to do, and how this can just go wrong, period. And the thing, because they've apparently been talking about this since Breaking Points existed, and the railroad industry is one of them. One of the interviews they brought up that I listened to was one of the safety guys. uh don't quote me on anything for specifics, but I guess they have hubs around the country where if something happens, they get a signal and then they call around to see what's going on, and then they try to get crews out there and everything. That was his job. And he was explaining a scenario that could happen in your hometown, and all these shortcuts they have to do are going to be a big problem, and then it's really a bitch to correct it once it happens. And he basically described this exactly a year ago. So it's an interesting situation we're in, because just like with the other pharmaceutical things, we have it's that interplay of capitalism and big government, and the government needs to be over I'm not going to say regulated. Yeah, regulated would be the word. Needs to be a regulatory body, but now they're kind of one thing.
Well, I'll also throw into that, and this is, I like the sentiment behind it, but I have a problem with the term deep state because it sounds like a silly conspiracy theory when really all it's talking about is I can't remember who I heard use this term, the self-licking ice cream cone. It is the bloated bureaucracy whose real point is to simply perpetuate itself, not whatever its mandate initially was. No, now they exist simply to perpetuate their own existence. And
Well,
it's
the
not,
deep part of it is because they're under the surface, and when you're us normal citizens and something goes wrong like this, everybody's like Buttigieg, Buttigieg, Buttigieg. But he's like the surface. He's the part of the iceberg that's sticking out. The big part underneath that's actually sinking the Titanic is the part that we can't see, and realistically we can't do anything about.
and it's not, and what I was getting at is the other problem with it is it's not just the government. It is large interests, special interests. Well, you need to unpack that. There are large bureaucracies that are closely connected with the government that are part of this. This is what the real scandal is with the Twitter files that is kind of getting lost. It's not just the it's not just the discrimination against certain points of view. It's not just the way they try to manipulate the narrative. It is that you have a big business, a big bureaucracy that is essentially a semi-private organization because it is working so closely with government entities. And in this particular instance, you have the unions. So one of the annoying things that when this really first started to bubble up in the mainstream news, it was annoyingly, as always, reacting to Orange Man bad. So when Trump started to talk about this, and then when he actually went there, then it kind of exploded into more mainstream news because they had
Amazing
to blame
PR move,
Trump.
by the way.
Yeah.
He made the Biden administration and Buttigieg look horrible.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that more. That's what my tabs are about, because one of the bizarre things about Trump, he of the gold-plated toilets, is that he is in the elite, and he is he is ostentatiously so with his big gold Trump brand, and yet you get the sense that he is not an elitist, that when he is around the common man and when he's talking about and to him, he genuinely cares about these people. Whether he does or not, you certainly get that sense that he genuinely cares about these people, and then contrast that with the stuff I'm going to talk about in a minute of the other side. But the point was,
well, that's the difference between do you want to finish your thought, or
no, go ahead.
Okay, that's the difference between having a Machiavellian in charge like Obama or the Bushes and a narcissist in charge. And this was one of the points I was trying to make with everybody that were Orange Man bad, because they pointed to the bombastic. They pointed to all the blatant narcissism that was him. And narcissism, yes, in a vacuum, is a negative personality trait. But if that narcissism goes in the direction with what's good for everybody, well, now you've got a powerful weapon, because the better they do, the more attention they get, the more validation they get. A
I'm going,
Machiavellian
yeah,
is not capable of the empathy that a narcissist is.
I'm going to give you what you need and want because I need the adulation that will then come from that.
This was a great example of that, but the best example of that was peace in the Middle East. What bigger thing, feather to put in your hat than to be the president that did that?
For over half a century, it has it has been, the unattainable goal that every president has wanted to try and has dabbled in and has never worked. Yeah. Um, but the point I was getting at, because we'll dig into that a little more here in a bit, but one of the one of the talking points that very quickly went around was to blame Trump for this because of deregulation or because he didn't go along with safety blah blah. It'll take you like 30 seconds, 90 seconds max to actually find the real story here, which is that the unions were trying to push a regulation that, first of all, wouldn't have mattered here because there were actually more people on this train, but it wouldn't have actually made anything safer. It just would have given more money to union people because it was about putting more people on these trains. And what the regulatory bodies and what the safety people, like the guy you were talking about, were wanting was more automated safety mechanisms. Okay, well, except the more automation you have, the less real people you need, which the unions don't like because they want money. So you have this this interplay between the big union bureaucracy and the big government bureaucracy, which ultimately, rather than its actual mandate, what they really are is a political body. So unions represent a block of voters, of support, of donations. So when push comes to shove, you're going to cave to them rather than what your mandate is, even if, what the union wants isn't, safer, isn't the best way to go. Doesn't matter. It's the political way to go. And so you're going to go that way. And this is just a glaring example of that because what happened is so horrific. But this happens all the time. I think I've pointed this out before as an example that a lot of people, I think, have forgotten that in Bush's first term, I think it was, he signed a steel tariff, a raise in the steel tariff, which the steel industry wanted. So that protected, I'm going off the top of my head, but as I recall from people like Walter Williams, economist, writing about this, that protected something like 30,000 jobs. But there was an estimated 100 to 150,000 jobs lost because of all the people who rely on steel whose costs now went up. And they had to find places to cut costs, which meant cutting the workforce. Well, and the point Walter Williams was making was, well, why? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any mathematical sense. Why would you risk 100 to 150,000 jobs to save 30? Because of diffused harm. Because if you get enough people together, they can make an impact above what their actual numbers are. And we see that with the woke nonsense, with outrage on social media and businesses caving to that. Well, this is a tiny fraction of your actual potential customer base, but they're organized and vocal, whereas all those other people are diffused. They're all spread out. So they don't have the impact. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which is a way of saying, uh, you know, get with like-minded people. If you want to affect change, and we've talked about being local before, show up to your city council meetings, show up to your school board meetings, and find people to go with you. One lone voice, yeah, maybe you can get a viral video going, but if you actually want to make an impact, Show up with 5 or 6 people together in a small setting like a city council or a school board meeting where very few people go in the first place. Well, now you have half dozen people saying the same thing. And then, even if you have more people there saying different things, if it's just 1 or 2 people, that doesn't carry the weight.
I
At
think
least
my
certainly not in the mind of a politician.
I think my problem is locally, my area is so ultra conservative. Everything is built around that, exactly what you would say is probably closer to the ideal: the family structure, the school system, all of these things, they're all in alignment. So the only complaints I would have are actually in the other direction. And it's kind of hard to find a coalition in this place for that without finding stupid woke people that are super loud and obnoxious. To find an actual classical liberal voice in the area I live in. Now, if you were in Austin, that's probably in abundance, right? Because the great thing about Austin is they say keep Austin weird, but it's not super woke. It's not like San Francisco. It's left, it's liberal, but it's not super woke. And in fact, the one time during the whole Floyd debacle that it tried to go a little woke, there was pushback from the liberal Austin populace. So somewhere like that. But then again, if I was there, what changes would I need to be making? I would have to push actually to the right to make any positive changes, because then you're getting into the weaknesses of. So it's really difficult depending on your geographical location. And
Well, there are things that I think the overwhelming majority of us can agree on, though, and unless you've just got a really solid school board or city council, I think it is necessary that we preempt some of these things, some of the woke nonsense, because it is so insidious, because of the way it sneaks in to. So, for instance, and you've talked a lot about this because you've actually looked at what these people say. You actually have their books, and the way CRT has morphed, the way uh, DEI has morphed, and rather than a city
yeah,
council or
I think from here on forward, we got to refer just to DEI, because
Mhm.
CRT is just an underlying principle underneath that. It's their
Yeah.
justification for it. So the people that are saying we're not putting CRT in school are technically correct, but they are putting DEI, which is based on that philosophy. So it's
And so what you see now is that these groups will insert this into a curriculum, and then they will sell the curriculum to a school district. And if the school district isn't looking closely, then you end up with this crap in the school, and the school board may have no clue. So there is some vigilance that is required, and some preempting of, go to the city council, go to the school board and say, hey, do you have a plan if one of these family friendly drag shows show up here? What are you going to do about it? Do you have a plan to make sure that, and bring specific examples, that this crap is not going to get into our schools, that this is not going to be foisted on our children while we're, assuming you people are doing what we would want you to do while we're busy trying to live our lives. So I do think there is, even if you think you're in a good place, I think we do need to be preemptive about this, and put our elected officials, and the three I always bring up: city council, school board, sheriff. Those are your three local elected officials who have tons of power and are close enough to you that they can actually be influenced.
in fact, I think one of them, city council, is 2 doors down from me. I saved her from a dog attack once.
From a dog attack or an over friendly dog?
No, a dog attack. There was these two, I guess they're twins, two twin girls. They probably at the time were about 12 or 13, walking a big giant German Shepherd.
Uh,
And the person in question had her little toy whatever dog and was walking, and the German Shepherd wanted to eat the little dog, and two girls were not able to hold the leash.
You think?
And I was in my garage working out with another friend, and I hit that garage door, and we barrel rolled under there shirtless and our shorts. It had to look like something out of a stupid satire action movie. but but I'm grabbing this big giant dog, and my friend's grabbing the little dog, pulling him away. It was entertaining if it wasn't such a dangerous situation. But
All
German
right,
Shepherds are scary.
they certainly can be. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have quite the set of jaws on them.
Well, and what people don't realize about these dogs are they might be great with people, but other dogs will trigger
mhm.
violence out of a dog just randomly. So you've got to be careful with that kind of thing.
Did you have any more thoughts on East Palestine, or did you want me to go into
Well, I wanted to just
stuff I had?
so just from a positional standpoint, since we talk about libertarians versus capitalism versus communism versus socialism, this is part of the problem, as we talked about with pharma, is we want small government. I think we would agree with that. We want small, more localized government, but we need government oversight, because this is where I can't jump on the libertarian bandwagon. The whole we need private security instead of police. We need everything is laissez-faire. The capitalist system will take care of itself. That works on a local level. That works on a small scale, but that does not work on the national level, especially with the size of the United States of America. It does not work on the global level, because what company is going to compete with Amazon right now? What transportation company is going to compete with Union Pacific? I don't know which exact railroad company was involved here, but what company is going to compete with that? Us as the consumer cannot make a change there. So we do need some government oversight. We need to get the fucking money out of the government. We need to not have the FDA funded by pharma. We need to not have the Railway and Transportation Committee funded by the railway companies that run on them.
Yeah.
We pay plenty of taxes. They can be funded by our tax dollars instead of sending it off to some other foreign country for some regime change that is going to come back and bite us in the ass later anyways. So, or another diversity, equity, inclusion program in the government that's costing us $50 billion. People aren't talking about those enough.
Well, and here is where the godfather of American libertarianism, Milton Friedman, breaks from some of the modern libertarian anarcho-capitalist crazy people, because he repeatedly made the point that where you must have government is where you have a danger to an uninterested, unparticipating third party. So the problem with something like this in particular, so you need strong regulations from the government, because the government is representing the town. The government is representing the people of East Palestine who aren't participating in this transaction. So whoever the chemicals belong to, they can be pissed off, and they can, sue the transportation company, for the derailment. But what about, so the transportation company is beholden to their customer, but what about the people of East Palestine? Those aren't their customers. So in a sense, they're not beholden to them. That's why you need someone looking out for them.
Yeah, and when we talk about scale, we also have to separate interstate from intrastate, from local business, all the way up to things that affect the entire United States. And I would think the railway system is something that probably should be under federal oversight.
Yeah. This is why you can't go dumping raw sewage into the creek, even though it runs on your property, because it's going to affect your neighbor. It's going to run right down, and he's going to have sewage in his yard.
When I was running a business, we had the fire marshal visit us every year, and it was not planned or scheduled. He would just pop in to make sure you weren't doing anything wrong and taking shortcuts or anything like that. But it's necessary, because if I had a building fire inside this building with other tenants, it could be disastrous to everybody involved.
Exactly. You would lose the delicious donuts, and then you would lose the sweet, sweet
Hey, I
liquor.
was next door to the liquor store, so we would have had a nice
Ah,
blaze going.
yes. Oh no, not the donuts, not the liquor.
Oh, there was one time they had dropped a bottle of whiskey, and those walls were so thin, and it busted right by the wall and soaked into the sheetrock, and then came under, and it smelled like a whiskey still in the gym for for about a week.
That's motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah. One more set so you can enjoy that glass of whiskey. All right. So to that point about uh um brain fart, what's the word I'm looking for? Accountability. So that is the government's proper role in a situation like this is accountability. Is first of all the fire marshal who shows up unannounced, the safety inspector who shows up to the railroad unannounced, holding them accountable beforehand, and then if something happens, getting there immediately to hold them accountable to make sure the mess is cleaned up, not waiting for 2 weeks and trying to ignore it.
Mhm.
Well, we have an accountability problem because we have a political discourse problem, because we care more about the team jerseys rather than the principles. And to that point, share that one. All right. Good old Joy Behar saying the quiet thing out loud. Audience gasped after the views Joy Behar implied she didn't imply Trump voting Ohioans to blame for talking. She blamed that she said you got what you deserved because you voted for Trump. You did that. She pointed her finger straight at the camera. And I'm not going to play the video because I can't stand these cackling hens, but I do have the quotes here. I don't know why they would ever vote for him, for somebody who, by the way, he placed someone with deep ties to the chemical industry in charge of the EPA's Chemical Safety Office. All of these a-holes do this. Let's just ignore all the people that Biden put in who I went over that of the deep ties to intelligence, finance, all these other things that he put in, but whatever. And also the 30 seconds it takes to debunk this crap about Orange Man, bad. The host then turned to face the camera with a pointed finger. That's who you voted for in that district, Donald Trump, who reduces safety. And then all the other hosts jump in. Yeah, this is all Donald Trump's fault. She's saying the quiet part out loud. Well, I don't know why everyone is aghast that she would say this. This is simply an escalation of what we've already seen before. Hey, does anyone remember oh, I'm going in the wrong order. Whatever. So Hillary Clinton, and her basket of deplorables. To just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables, right? Clinton said, and I'm definitely not playing this one because I can't stand her voice. The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that, and he has lifted them up. She said the other half of Trump supporters feel that the government has let them down and are desperate for change. Those are people we have to understand and empathize with as well. So she says the words, we have to empathize with them, but boy, she sure didn't show any action. She didn't towards that. Half of Trump supporters, Trump in the 2016 election got just over 60 million votes, I believe. So you're saying that 30 million Americans are racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. They are all of the terrible ists and icks. If someone is that, then you have not only do you have no obligation to engage with them, you are actually obligated to shun them because they have no place in polite society. In the same way that anyone who expressed the racist segregationist views of the 1950s would be shunned. No one would think to say that in polite society anymore because it has become so taboo. Well, same with all of these ists. So why does it take 2 weeks or more for anyone to give a damn about East Palestine, Ohio? Because they're ists. Who cares? It's flyover country. It's Trump supporters. That district voted for Trump overwhelmingly twice. So it's their own damn fault.
Well, and here's the problem you're talking about. You're putting the blame in one place because of uh, with the lack of response and with the lack of safety and everything. One of the big problems in this situation is the incompetence of FEMA. And we had 8 years in between Katrina and now. And Katrina exposed the incompetence of FEMA. 8 years of Obama, I should say. We had the remainder of Bush, 8 years of Obama, and then Trump. Nobody was doing anything because it's just status quo. Okay, this thing is over. The news cycle's over. We're just going to keep doing things the way we were doing.
My point
including
is
Undersecretary of State Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, yeah, I'm going to expand this at the end here, but my point is, if this had not happened in the Rust Belt, in a small town precinct that voted overwhelmingly for Trump twice, if this had happened in South Central Los Angeles, if this had happened near the port of New Orleans, the places that are 80 to 90% Democrat, deep, dark blue, do you think the media would have ignored it? Do you think the White House would have taken so long to get involved? No, because they have a vested political interest. Who cares about the actual people? Who cares about the actual principle involved here? We have become so balkanized that you can subconsciously ignore half the country because they're not your people. And my point is, this isn't new, because Hillary then, in her basket of deplorables, was simply echoing something that has been forgotten about, which is, Obama had this veneer of likability, but he wasn't. He was a trained Marxist. He was a deep leftist. He just had a aw shucks delivery and a fawning media that refused to ever criticize him. In the 2008 campaign, Obama was speaking at a private fundraiser in San Francisco, and assuming no one outside the room would hear what he had to say, stated the following. He said that jobs in small towns, quote, have been gone now for 25 years. They fell through the Clinton administration and the Bush administration, and each successive administration has said that somehow these communities are going to regenerate, and they are not. And he concluded, it's not surprising then that they get bitter. They cling to guns or religion or antipathy toward people who aren't like them, or anti-immigrant sentiment or anti-trade sentiment as a way to explain their frustrations.
Flip that sentence around, and that is precisely why Trump won.
Haven't I played before the what's his bucket? The big fat guy. More.
Yeah. I don't think we played it, but we went over it.
Okay, I went over the transcript of in 2015, or no, it was 2016. I think in the summer, he was giving this talk, and he was the only kind of mainstream guy that predicted Trump was going to win, and rightly predicted why. Because you have stepped on these people, the people Obama is talking about here, you have stepped on them for decades, and the only power they have left is their vote, and they are going to use that vote to raise a giant middle finger to you, the elites, and say, screw you, we're going to vote for this bombastic a-hole that you hate because you hate him. And the delivery was entirely different, because the delivery, even though he is this hypocritical douche who lambasts capitalism and then owns like 3 houses, like Trump, he actually exhibits, whether it's genuine or not, he exhibits genuine empathy and sympathy for the downtrodden, for the forgotten man. So he's saying the same thing basically, but the presentation is someone who is not an elitist, which is what Obama clearly is portraying here. This is an elitist. Hillary is an elitist. They look down on these people, and there is no accountability. There is no consequence for this. Why? Because we have to vote for our team jersey. We have to cheer for our guy. To the point that now, when I was looking for those quotes of the basket of deplorables, here we have Salon from, when was this? Is 2021. Yeah, here we go. December 7th, 2021. Hillary was right about the deplorables and about the end of Roe v. Wade. During her 2016 presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton warned us that Donald Trump and his basket of deplorables were a threat to American democracy. She wasn't a prophet. She was simply offering a reasonable analysis based on the available evidence. And she paid an enormous political price for daring to tell the truth. No, she didn't. She didn't pay an enormous political price. She barely lost. She won the popular vote. She had fawning media coverage. She had everybody but Fox News and the conservative blogosphere and talk radio excusing her comments, explaining them away. And now, a few years later, you have the favorable left-wing media doubling down and saying she was absolutely right. You people are deplorable. How does that matter?
If paying the political cost is the fact that a certain percentage of the deplorables got off their ass and voted for the first time in their entire life because of that comment, then yes, it's correct. But it is, all the other things still apply. But that, I mean, that's just whatever motivates you, man. And sometimes it's your opponent.
Yes, I've said before.
Same thing was the flip side on in the 2020 election. So many people got up to vote against Trump that Biden won. It wasn't, nobody was rallied to Biden. He wasn't inspiring confidence in anybody. No. It was orange man bad. We're going to vote against him.
Yeah, you could see it in the way they ran their campaign, which was to hide Biden in the basement and just let Trump self-destruct. Yeah, and let the media carry their water.
The whole strategy was don't fuck up and pump him full of Adderall for that second debate. That was the whole strategy.
So this is not a, I'm using all Democrats here because I'm going off of the East Palestine thing. That's kind of my trigger here. But this is a bipartisan problem. All right. So this is from a couple years ago, or not a couple years. This was last year. This is the 2022 midterm election. One of the most common refrains in politics is voters hate Washington. If you look at polls, they do, and want outsiders to be elected to office. But Senator Raphael Warnock's victory in Georgia's Senate runoff on Tuesday is part of a trend that suggests that, at least in 2022, that wasn't true. Each of the 29 Senate incumbents who ran for re-election won. This year's Senate elections marked the first time in at least a century in which no incumbent senator up for re-election lost. So we're all pissed off. We're all dissatisfied, but we're also wearing team jerseys, and we're not going to punish the assholes who are in charge and doing this to us, because it's more important that our side retains power or gains power, whichever the case may be. Mitch McConnell is one of the sleaziest, most obnoxious. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to get. Well, it's too late now. Sleaziest, most obnoxious people in the Senate, and has been for decades. So his reaction to what was going on in East Palestine, this was like a week ago, was to say, I'm paraphrasing here, that he was going to make sure he communicated to the American people that the most important thing right now is Ukraine and fighting Russia. Are you effing kidding me? That's your response here. You have what may be the biggest ecological industrial disaster since Chernobyl affecting your own citizens, your neighbors up the road in Ohio. And the most important thing is to make sure Americans don't lose focus in the war on Ukraine and how we need to support them. Screw you, you sleazeball. You're saying that because, as I've said before, Ukraine is not a country, it's a giant laundromat. And he is one of the slimy people involved in that. He has done nothing but politics his entire adult life. His wife is a high-level muckety-muck in, I believe the transportation department. And yet they are multimillionaires. How? On, low six-figure government salaries. Magic.
Magic.
And you're telling me, Kentucky, that there's no one else to vote for? There hasn't been anyone else to vote for decades except this sleazeball? But you're going to complain about San Francisco, who somehow can't find anyone else to vote for other than Nancy Pelosi, who is either losing her mind or a raving alcoholic, or both.
Or both.
If you look at her public appearances and actions.
Which is a problem with the party system, though, because you listen to Tulsi Gabbard talk about this. She skyrocketed in the Democratic Party, but when she was talking about it, and I'm trying to remember who I was listening interview her, it's because she hadn't done anything yet, and they assumed because she checked all these boxes, that she was going to go with this whole party line and use all of those things. And so she had barely set foot in Congress when she was being asked to be the vice chair, because she was a woman of color in the Democratic Party, that she could check box in the military. She was all of these things they could check. And they just assumed she would go along with everything because we're the Democratic Party. And she's obviously going to be one of our people. So, we can
on
have
our team.
We're on our team, and you fit all of these bills. So they promoted her to all these things, and then realized, oh, she's not going to vote in lockstep. And it was oops, and it was too late. So she had that clout already because they offered it to her before she had to prove herself. But you look at something like running against Mitch McConnell. What the hell is the Republican Party doing to prevent that from happening?
Yep.
A Democrat in that district's not going to win. But you also have to have some system for a challenger to come in, and even though they're not preferred by the party, could still end up being preferred by the people.
I'm not saying it would be easy, because you have had centuries of the party system making sure that it protects itself. I mean, so it's not just that we are lazy and voting for our team jerseys. That is part of the problem. To me, that's the bigger part of the problem. But yes, it is incredibly difficult to get an incumbent out because the incumbents make sure of that. The party system makes sure of that.
Now, this is something we talk about the local level a lot, but this is something that could be taken care of on the national level. So we have this ever fluctuation of the House and the Senate, which could lead to different leaders on either side. Make that part of the ballot. Here's your top 5 you can choose from. I guarantee you Mitch McConnell would not have made it in a national vote.
Well, this is something I've long thought, but will never happen because the party has to protect itself, is the court has ruled, and rightfully so, that the parties can do basically whatever they want with their primaries because they're private entities. Yes, they run the government, but technically they're private entities, so they can make their own rules when it comes to things like private
entities.
But the members of those parties should push harder for their voices to be heard. I have long thought that the party leadership in Congress should be voted for by the people. That should be part of the conventions, that the convention delegates should be the ones who vote for congressional leadership. That would be a better way to have the people's voices heard rather than the back scratching political maneuvering, sleazeball, swampy politics determining who is actually in charge in Congress.
Well, from scientific literature, we have another way that would be very efficient. You could have random sampling from the party members. If you have a red card in your hand, you potentially could be, just like jury selection, you could potentially be asked who should be at the forefront of that.
Yeah. The flip side to that, though, to your point about how they shouldn't be treated like private entities, is those people are going to assume governmental office. They are going to assume constitutional office. The person who is elected speaker, that is a constitutionally appointed position, who, based on the 25th Amendment, if memory serves, is the third in line for the president. And we, the people, don't get to vote for him. We vote for number 1 and number 2, and yet we don't have a say in who's number 3.
Yeah.
That seems a little odd.
The fact that our top 3 choices in the last 2 years was Biden, Harris, and then Pelosi. That, I mean, that was, it was truly hang on Biden. As corrupt as he is. Oh.
So I gotta, this is my last thought on this. I got a book. I told you I was trying to finish the book I was reading.
Oh yeah, I was curious about that. Yeah.
So the book I was reading, I still haven't finished, this really good biography on Stonewall Jackson, which I'll talk about at some point, because he's a very interesting, complicated, flawed figure, and it's
as are any interesting person in this world.
And he's a good example of why you can't just run around tearing down statues and screaming about history. You actually need to look at it in depth. All right, but the book I get Sunday that's going to piss me off when I start reading it is this one. Steve Deace, Daniel Horowitz, Rise of the Fourth Reich. And the subtitle is Confronting COVID Fascism with a New Nuremberg Trial, So This Never Happens Again. The point of my ranting about accountability is, you know, I went back to 2008 and Obama's comments. We could have gone back ad nauseum. I mean, I've been a political nerd since the Clinton administration, so I could have gone back there. There has not been true accountability for some pretty damn egregious things that have gone on in our politics. Is it then a surprise that we have reached a point where government and private industry working arm in arm with government had no compunction against endangering the lives of the entirety of the world, and they fear no accountability? There was at the last WEF meeting, there were some journalists, some independent journalists who got in, and the Pfizer horse doctor CEO was there, and someone followed him.
Yeah,
shouting questions.
I got to see those videos.
That video?
Yeah.
You look at his lack of response. There's also a lack of care there. This is someone who knows, who is certain he will not face account. How many stories have been coming out from the beginning, but escalating the past few years, of malfeasance during the trials, of what the companies knew, how soon they knew it, and how much they ignored it or buried it or fudged their own data because they have no fear of accountability. The point of a new Nuremberg trial.
We don't have to go back that far with Vioxx.
Remind me, which one is that?
Merck's drug for, I can't remember what, but it caused heart issues that would kill you. And they fudged the number just a little bit because they were right on the threshold of what would have been good. and they fudged it to just be underneath. And $20 billion later, they got a $2 billion lawsuit against them because they fudged the numbers. So they knew all along they were going to profit from it, even when they had to take the drug off the market.
The point of a new Nuremberg style trial, not just for these private industry, big pharma people, but also for the government officials, elected and unelected, who worked arm in arm with him to make it happen, is so that it never happens again. And they are already talking about doing it again openly because they have no fear of accountability. They are already talking about the next pandemic. They're already talking about bundling new mRNA vaccines together, so that I can't remember which three, but they're pushing to put out a triple cocktail for three different things. I can't remember which, of mRNA vaccine. While we have all this going on that is being ignored, it's going to happen again, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse.
And it's going to take on many forms.
Mm-hmm.
When's the first environmental lockdown going to be proposed? Too many people, the Malthusians out there. Well, guess what? We talked about during sexy time that the fact that that's going to be taken care of anyways, but all of these issues are going to just take many forms. It could be a disease, could be a war in Russia and Ukraine, it could be the environment. One thing after the other, after the other, after the other, anything they can make you panic about.
Mm-hmm. Anything they can make you panic about so that they can solidify their power to grow their wealth. This is all about greed, and we're letting them get away with it because we ourselves are greedy when it comes to tribalism. We greedily want our tribe to win.
Well, and it's deeper than that, because the reason these things are being used is because the underlying tone is safety. People will ignore a lot of things if they feel a little bit safer.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, people know that. You know, I bring this up often. Stalin's favorite scientist was Pavlov, right? Human conditioning. What things make humans do the things you want to do? It's not just dog slobbering. He had a lot of very unethical human experiments that went on. But that's what you can do when you live in a state where you can use war prisoners for whatever experiments you want.
Yep. All right. Well, that was a fun way to end that conversation. I feel good now. Let's take a short break, and then we'll switch to some more fun. We'll talk some fitness.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so for a change of pace, speaking of fitness, one of the reasons I'm soon to be the size of a Samoan is I brought back a lot of these. The Mauna Loa macadamia nuts are the legit Hawaiian macadamia nuts, and I have seen this brand in stores around here, but I've only ever seen the plain sea salt and the chocolate covered ones, whereas the honey roasted are also coated in crack or maybe fentanyl. I've heard that's more addictive. So this is the reason I'm soon to be the size of a Samoan. I haven't looked to see if you can order these online because I don't want to be the size of two Samoans. Another thing I brought back that I just now noticed what it's called, and this might amuse you. I should wait until you take a drink to see if it comes out of your nose. But one of the places we went when we were on Kauai was a coffee plantation of the Kauai Coffee Company, and they had a bunch of different. They had all a bunch of varieties out, so you could sample. You could sample them all, and one of the ones I liked, so I got a bag of it, was the banana. Um, I didn't notice the full title though, so I'm drinking toasty banana nut cream is what I got a refill of. So
You got to get a little on your glasses. Oh,
Nutty and delicious.
oh,
All right. So we were going to talk because the last time we really took a deep dive into fitness on this channel, well, of course, every time we talk fitness, we are sponsored by the Real Fitness channel,
we are.
which is real. So go there if you want in-depth technical discussion.
I know the
But
owner. He's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah, he's all right. He gives me good whiskey. Um, was in real time. Sam wrote a program for me, so you could see the thought process there. And so now I did that for 4 or 5 weeks, however long it's been. Uh, and so now we're going to talk progression, okay? Because you don't just do the same thing every day forever. It's yeah, it's good that track your weight. You should see some slow, steady increase there to show you're gaining progress and all that. But you do need to change it up, in large part because going way back to kind of the first time we talked about fitness, and you went over the 5 principles of fitness, or 6 for you, right? That you added one, or is it 4? Whatever.
The variables of fitness.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
and sometimes I add mental health to that as well.
in the same way that you cannot get complete nutrition in every meal, and you're going to be the size of 2 Samoans if you try, you spread it out. You have some of this at this meal, and you have some of that at that meal, and so over, say, a week, it averages out. You get all the nutrients your body needs. You can't cram everything that you need into one program. Some are going to be tilted more one way than the other based on, based on the individual, based on goals, based on what you're able to do. So what we did was weighted more towards strength and cutting fat. So there was some added intensity there with active rest instead of regular rest periods. If I was going for pure strength, I would have had a little more rest and then a little more weight, right? So just as an example. All right, so now we need to evaluate and then adjust, right?
Yeah, and I'm re-looking over the program because I hadn't reviewed it again. Let's see. We started with back, then squat, well, then legs in general, then upper body push. So upper body pull, legs, upper body push, repeat for a second time each week. So it was a 6-day split. Uh, Now, I would put a disclaimer on this. If I had a client I was working with and they were putting everything on me, and it wasn't just a kind of a one-off, I would have a giant, what we call a macro cycle, where if I would look at that person, do the evaluation, and then say, where do I want to be with this person in a year? Where do I want to be with this person in 2 years? And then you can even look, I try to have retention as one of my business models, and I do very well at that. You kind of look at the future. So, okay, so you're 50 years old now. You've got a kid that's in high school. What are your plans when they have kids? What do you want to do after retirement? And so what we can do what we call backdating and go back and say, well, if you need to be able to do XYZ here at this moment in time, you need to be able, when you're only 50, need to be able to do this. This is so that's completely out the window because this was a one-off until the follow-up where I would normally already have that kind of idea going way forward. On a smaller scale, we look at something like the baseball season. I kind of have an idea where my athlete's going to be when they come back from their baseball season. And then I have an idea of how long I have to get them where I want them to be for the next one. So these things would have already been pre-thought out on my end. So we went through basically what you wanted to get accomplished in the next cycle, and now we're actually going from there without that full idea, except unless you have an idea
Mhm.
there. Uh but I'm looking back through it, relatively strength
Well,
focused.
but for me, and something we kind of talked a little bit about while writing the program, is one of the variables for me on a macro sense is uh managing and living with pain.
Yeah.
So in a macro sense, that's my overall goal, with any program, is how will this help me manage and live with chronic pain? And so that is an additional wrinkle that's kind of thrown in there
Mm-hmm.
uh for me, which, and there's, for anyone, there's always going to be a wrinkle, and life's gonna, you know, throw curveballs. For your baseball example, you know where your client should be when he comes out of the season, except, well, crap, you had an injury, right? So now
Not with
you're,
my clients.
you know, no, it shouldn't be. I guess baseball's a bad example because it's really hard to have an impact injury there, unless maybe you were doing something
Well, no, I just got a text from
stupid
one of my
like,
clients. He was running bases and another guy was trying to tag him and apparently
uh,
put the crown of his helmet down into his face, and so now he's got a concussion, so we got to work around that. uh,
or
Plus
or
possibly a broken jaw.
or something that happens relatively frequently when you're training women is, yeah, I'm pregnant. Okay, we're gonna have to change things up here.
I think I'm up to 16 training pregnant women in my career,
Yikes.
but three of them were relatively frequent because recent, because I had a cohort that was around that 30, 33-year-old age.
Mhm.
And that's when, yep, you kind of are thinking about that with your family. 30, 33-year-old age, been married a couple years, already established career. So it was kind of a little bit all at once. But early in my career, it was more of a kind of a mass issue because I just had so many people. It was a revolving door when I was at Velocity. Those boot camps would come in
Mhm.
and just you just see so many people, hundreds of people over the course of a short period of time. And there was I had to tell people, be careful how you say this, because getting more fit makes you more reproductively viable anyways. And I had a string of girls, ladies, women that were trying and been unproductive at it, and came for a few months and got extremely fit, and all of a sudden we're pregnant, and people were saying, oh, as soon as I started with Sam I got pregnant. No, 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 don't say it like that. It's not that kind of gym. So I had a big string early on, but then just the age, because these were former athletes that became regular clients and then they got into their 30s, and just the progression of age
Mhm.
kind of put that on me here recently. But
Did,
yeah,
did
training pregnant women is a challenge, but it's not too bad.
did I send you the picture of the back of somebody's truck where he had uh unvaxxed sperm, $3,500
Yes,
per
yes.
load?
Is that going to be our cover photo, our thumbnail? That would
All
sure throw
right.
people off from the first half of this conversation.
Oh yeah. All right. So where do you start when it comes to
Well, we went through
evaluating
just a
progression?
very aggressive strength phase with cutting involved. So this is usually in a long-term progression where I would cycle back to GP, and I would cut it probably down to 4 days a week of lifting with
Mhm.
what we call concurrent training, where you do just straight up traditional long distance cardio on the days off if you want to do something. Uh, that would be probably the natural progression from where we're at. Let me share that up here. So this is what we did last time. Again, it's a 6-day split. So we're talking, again, very aggressive, high frequency. You're lifting for 6 out of the 7 days of the week, unless you broke it up differently, where you would just cycle through like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, or whatever. But typically, if you're doing each day in a week, this is kind of aggressive. Lower volume on each day. You see there's just 3 groups of exercises. So
Mhm.
I'm assuming you could get through it in probably, with a long warm up, 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. A
But
little longer on the leg days because I need a little more warm up on those days.
Yeah. So this is actually a lot of professionals I know in the industry that talk about how they progress as they got older. Is this is the preferred where you do shorter workouts
Mhm.
but more days a week. Uh,
That's why
I
I really like the push-pull legs basic split for that reason.
Mhm.
Because you can spread that load out and still get a lot of
on, on your
fun
glasses.
fact, 3,500 per load. Uh, you can spread that out and still get a lot of work in.
Yeah. The tricky part of this one, because again, it's 3 days before you hit the back, quote unquote, back exercises.
Mhm.
And this is why I don't like body part splits, because yes, your pulling upper body exercises are 3 days apart, so you should be able to heal. And then 4 days on that when the day the one between where you get the
Mhm.
extra day of rest. But there's overlap. Your triceps are an elbow extensor, so you would think of them as a pushing muscle, but they're also a shoulder extensor, which is what happens when you pull. So this is shoulder extension. This is also shoulder extension. So your triceps are a two joint muscle. So we have to be real careful with these kind of splits because there's a lot of overlap. So what we did in response to that is we had the volume very low.
Mhm.
Just three highlight just three groups of exercises with actually this last one being more of a prehab set.
Yeah.
And we didn't do any conditioning that day. So then day 2, this is all legs. This is front squats, everybody's favorite exercise to hate. Weighted bridges, which I love them. You know, typically seen as a girl exercise, but everybody should be doing them.
Yeah.
And then
Well, that's only because little known fact, males do not have glute muscles. That's true.
oh no, I call it button gut syndrome. Guys lose their butt and they gain a gut.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a huge chunk of muscle. That is extremely metabolically active.
Mhm.
And when you get button gut, you also get back pain. So you want to keep that butt going. And then we have a leg circuit, which one of my favorite little combinations there: lunges, lateral squats, single leg RDLs, and then some ab wheel. And I even gave you a break there. Wasn't I nice? When I'm
Yeah, very
aggressive,
nice.
I just
Thank
have
you.
the ab wheel as the break. Day 3, bench press. So this is our brotastic day. Oh, the lean and large split set. So that's a Stepani method that I got from him. Two slightly heavier sets with two lighter sets. Dip, skull crusher, holy triceps, Batman, and then we're back to pulling. So yeah, this is quite aggressive, but you can see the daily volume is low. What I would do from here is let me pushing. That's relatively higher rep. What's our second push day look like? Okay, so we went lower intensity on our push days. So if you want to stay relatively aggressive, what you can do is you can flip it. Now you're going to be high rep on your pulls and high rep on your squat, your leg patterns, and then you would be low rep on your upper body pushes. So if you wanted to still work some strength, we set that up on accident that you could do that. Uh, and that works with any split. So anytime you're focusing on a pushing exercise like bench press or dips or overhead press or something along those lines, you can go ahead and go low rep here and then just flip it for the other two. This is where it gets a little tricky, and I don't want to get overly complicated, but I guess it doesn't matter here. This isn't the official fitness channel, but
Mhm.
yeah, this is where it gets a little bit more tricky, and you can play with these things. I do it sometimes just because I want variety for my clients, but this is also in the realm of how I hurt myself because I was trying to play with these things, and I ended up doing two things back to back, which ended up setting me up for that pec tear on day 2 of the workouts. But it is an option if we play it right. If not, I would just go back to kind of a high frequency, high rep 4-day program, 2 lifts, cardio, 2 lifts, cardio, day off kind of program. So it's that's where it's up to you now. Do you want to be more aggressive and take a chance?
So how else do you evaluate individualized progression? Are there kind of standard things you look for or you ask, or is it, or do you just kind of play it by feel, so to speak, you know, based on just, the eyeball test of what it looks like to you, that individual is doing or how they're doing with, the previous phase?
It's 3-part. So first, there's just the general. We have to have a system that progresses you. Hey, let me do a whiteboard here. So again, if this is progress on the y-axis and time on the x-axis, no, everybody wants this, but that's not possible. That's a recipe for disaster. But if you do it right,
Unless you have some supplements helping you recover.
but if you do it right, you can do something like this. Okay. Now that's an individual variable. Okay. So if that's strength, and what the way I see it is, at least in leg and well, in even testosterone enhanced, you would still need the wave. You can't just get that. Now you might get it at first. You might get something that looks like this, but then eventually it goes like. So even testosterone enhanced, you get something like that. But this is individual variable. We'll call this strength. So the way I see it is, if this was us right here, we just hit that. At least for 2 of the main vectors of training, the vertical pull and the upper body pull and the legs. So we probably want to do this for a second. Doesn't mean you're going easy. It just means you're pulling back on the intensity. So intensity is closeness to 1 rep max. So in this point, I would go back to those 15s, those high rep sets, 15 to 20s. But this being when you started doing 15 to 20s, well, you're not starting from square one. You're just doing higher rep, and hopefully that strength translates to a higher 15 rep number. And I use a rep range here, but you could calculate it if you want the percentages. I'll do a 14 to 16, and if I hit 16 and feel like I keep going, I add a little bit of weight. If I don't hit the 14, it's too heavy, and you can play in there. But then by the time you're at your next strength phase, so phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 being strength again, we should be able to progress to here. And if the slope of the curve is obviously, this is not to scale, but hopefully next time you get to that next one, because you started higher than your medium rep phase and then your high rep phase, low rep phase, you're back, you're up at a better starting place. And then we drop it again, and then we work it up. So we drop it again, then we work it up. And ultimately, your high rep phase, at some point, you're doing more than when you were strength training. And if we follow this model, then usually you can get pretty linear success with those little waves.
This is one of the reasons when we talked about, things to look for to find a good trainer is write stuff down. And if you're training yourself, write stuff down. You want to be able to go back and look and say, all right, on this, the bench press 2x8, 2x12, what was the weight I was using? All right, what is the weight I'm using now? You want to be able to, 1, make sure you're progressing, and 2, psychologically, you need to see that progression so that you are you have that added motivation to keep going. If you feel like you're spinning your wheels, you're just treading water, then what's the freaking point, right? And that's the why should I go to the gym? It doesn't do anything for me. I don't feel like working out today because it's pointless. You, that is a that is a difficult thing to overcome as it is, more so if you don't see those results. You need to, you need to set yourself up for success by showing yourself you're not just doing the same thing. You're not just spinning your wheels.
Yeah, this is why I don't like the straight up strength model, which would be the 5-3-1 Jim Wendler model is the best for getting absolutely strong. But I just showed you a wave method because we have more considerations than just one variable. And when it comes to safety and injury prevention, tissue development matters. And tissues develop with time over attention. Strength develops faster because it's mostly neurological. So if you don't get injured and you focus just on strength, you're going to get something like what I showed earlier. You're going to get an initial spike. It's going to level off. And then you're just going to stop getting stronger because you never paid attention to the tissue. You have sensors in your muscles that say this muscle can handle no more. And the nervous system will refuse to fire more.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's what you've talked about with the mom who lifts the car because her baby's trapped inside, and then they kind of don't tell you, and she also tore all her ligaments while doing it.
well,
That's
this
the
is the
point
better
of
case
those.
scenario than that. This is just your body saying, I'm not going to get stronger.
Exactly. So your body has
This is
built-in
what you're talking
mechanisms.
about. We're getting stronger really fast, and injury happens.
Right. So normally your body has these mechanisms to keep that from happening, but there are instances where those can be short-circuited.
Mm-hmm. And if your sensors are all working in order, then you plateau. Yeah, it's frustrating, but if you can get back on the right track, you have this injury happen, you can end up
Yeah.
below baseline
Uh-huh.
and then trying to work back out of it. And if you have a true injury, then there's probably going to be bigger setbacks along the way. I'm dealing with that right now with my shoulder. But yeah, if there's more to strength than just how much you can do. If it's just how much you can do, the nervous system is an amazing thing, and we're capable of a lot of force. Chimpanzees are smaller than us, right? In body size, in muscle mass, they can rip us apart with their bare hands. We have things in our brain that stop us from being that strong because they also don't have long-term thought process to the degree that we do. I mean, more so than a dog or a cat, but not so much as we do. And your body will shut off to preserve itself. And that's actually one of the more frustrating things because you're like, I know I can do this, but that day you couldn't. Well, good thing because your body shut off before you hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish my body would have shut off before I hurt myself.
Oh, yep. Speaking of injury, I just remembered the other thing I wanted to talk about today. I don't know if you have something off the top of your head or handy of CrossFit and injury.
Oh, it's over patterning. It's the randomness and it's over patterning.
Because something I finally finished watching Physical 100, and something the wife commented on were, well, a CrossFitter won, but also how many CrossFitters made it into like the top 20. There were quite a few. Yeah, that's true. Because the way it's structured, it addresses all of those variables, right? And ultimately, like we kind of ranted about, that final series of challenges were kind of designed so that a big guy was never going to win. You needed someone
No
who had
extreme in
more
any sport
overall.
was going to win. And CrossFit is the ultimate middleman, right? Now I would have liked to see one of those special forces guys get a little bit further. I mean, the climber got really far, but because he was a little smaller in stature, that first tug of war thing took him out. By a split second, though. The guy who won the whole thing is barely in it by a turn of a key, basically, in time.
Photo
But
finish, yeah.
yeah, that's the way I like to say is CrossFit works if you survive, right? And when we look at games competitors, we cannot make that representative of the whole system as a whole. We can make it representative of the sport, but we can't make it representative of the system. The system itself leaves a lot of bodies in its wake because we're talking about high impact movements, which have, I could write a beautiful paper on why CrossFit is good. This is what I use when I'm talking about other scientific literature and meta-analysis. I could write a paper that would focus on all the good things about it. Total body movements. We got high impact movements. We've got high intensity interval training. We've got a lot of effort involved. They have a great system for getting effort out of their clients. But at the same time, if every competition is a sport, you get hurt in sport.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to strength and conditioning, you do everything in the gym to make sure somebody doesn't get hurt in sport as much as possible. And you never want to get hurt in the gym. They flip that around because it's marketing. But if you survive, the dirty little secret, games competitors don't train like CrossFit Central has their model. It's not random. It's quite intricate, actually. I have learned a lot from some of the best coaches in the CrossFit Games competitions. But at the same time, that's not what you do when you go to your box and you do the WOD. And I'm sorry, don't do stupid shit. Burpees and then jump over a bar, burpees, jump over a bar. What happens when you can't jump over a bar again?
Oops.
Best case scenario, you trip and you catch yourself. Worst case scenario, you land on the bar, your feet flip up, and then you land back first on the bar again, and you have a broken back. You know how many of those there are in CrossFit? It's more than you would want.
I think I've mentioned this before, but the first time you wrote a program for me, and I think you were still at Velocity at the time, and because of, and we just kind of showed it with the with the 6-day program we had there of the active rest. It kind of looks like you're doing a bunch of circuits and it's high intensity and you're never resting, you're never getting a break. But it's more structured than that. As to your point, it's more thought out than that of just doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. And so I kind of asked, okay, so how is this different from CrossFit? Because I'd heard you rant about CrossFit. We had discovered bro science by then, and one of his early ones was a hilarious
It's
video on
still his
CrossFit.
best one. It's still his
And
best one.
and you showed me a study that, oh wow, look at all these awesome results. Flip to the back. 60% of the study participants could not finish the study because of injury. 60%. Yeah, that 40%, man, they got great results, but those are not good odds.
Well, look at boot camp. This is why I hated calling workouts boot camps. Boot camp itself is not designed to make you more physically fit. You'll come out of it more physically fit, but it's a mental challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It's to separate the wheat from the chaff.
It's why in that pre-challenge in Physical 100, the hanging challenge, it ultimately came down to mental. That's why there was one of those special forces guys there, because so much of it is mental. Can you Lone Survivor is a good book for this, because the first half of the book, he's talking about getting through buds, getting through the initial challenge. And he was fortunate in that in the small town where he grew up, there was a former SF, a former Green Beret who had done tours in Vietnam, and he helped them get ready for that by putting them under physical strain that was ultimately about toughening them mentally, so that he went into the special forces uh, physical challenges with the mindset that there is no way I'm stopping. There is no way I'm giving up. The only way I'm going to wash out of this program is if I physically cannot, as if I'm injured. But otherwise, I'm making it through.
Anybody
Oh dear.
remember rhabdomyolysis?
Uncle Rabdo.
Uncle Rabdo. Something previously only seen in rare occasions of car accidents, ultra marathoners, and special forces training. It is when the muscle is so damaged the kidneys cannot take care of it and the body compartmentalizes that area. So you have extreme edema, you have extreme swelling because the body says, we're not taking any more bad stuff from that area. Here's some water. Hopefully we can handle it later. This is complete negligence. 30 out of 100,000. If we were to be doing a drug test, or this is more than COVID death rates, right? This is not good.
Mm-hmm.
These are young, healthy people because you have to be to do the activity that they're doing.
Yep.
And I would like to highlight the possible end results. And this does not include the fact that sometimes that compartmentalized area, basically the muscle just atrophies and it's almost useless. This, again, other than those specific extreme conditions, car accident because you're mangled and your muscles breaking down too fast for your kidneys to take care of. And we started seeing it with this high prevalence rate in CrossFit training, not CrossFit games, CrossFit training. Your 29-year-old newly soccer mom wants to get her belly off after the pregnancy, blowing her triceps out because the complete random overdoing it competition-based workouts.
Yeah. And that was kind of the point I wanted to make of, oh, hey, look at this physical challenge game, physical 100. I should do CrossFit because look how awesome these CrossFitters did. Okay, yeah, but how did those particular individuals get there?
So here's
And
the big lies about CrossFit. The first big lie is if you're from CrossFit games, the two big lies are they're not natural. Any physically based sport, when you know the 2 times of year you're going to be tested, the top of the top are not going to be natural. Second big lie, they don't do CrossFit. They do progressive programs that are not random and are not the thing you're getting when you go to the box.
they're not random because the point is to win the competition that they are going to be in. So they are focused on, this is how I need to get better at these events.
No, it's well rounded. It's not random. And the other part of it is these people are so physically fit. So this is a sub point to the second part. They're so physically fit because of their non-random programs that they can get on YouTube and do your WOD and make it look really good for the clicks. And there was a third sub point, but I don't remember what it was. But yeah, that's the two. They're not natural. They're just like natural bodybuilders. They know when they're being tested and they're not natural. And I mean, let's look at the women. We need to do a pants check with some of those women. Although I guess that's not politically correct anymore, but they may identify as women at this point.
Ma'am. Okay.
But then yeah, they do progressive programs.
Well, the third point I would make is, and you kind of touched on this, is these people are at the tails of the bell curve already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This isn't.
Oh, I know what I know what my third one was. They're all elites in the sport they came from before CrossFit. Frazier, what was he, 5 or 6 time champion? He was an Olympic lifter. All he did was take his Olympic lifting, add conditioning. By the way, he lost 200 pounds on his clean and jerk in the process, but he was still a better Olympic lifter than almost everybody else there.
What wasn't the guy who won physical 100? He's a CrossFitter now, but wasn't he an Olympian?
A snowboarder, yeah.
Snowboarder. Okay. There were several Olympians who
the bobsledder who had an amazing vertical, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they basically do CrossFit or something like CrossFit now. So they were already the tails of the bell curve. And so yeah, when they go into this, they're going to make it look easy, one, and two, they're already conditioned to the point that they have less risk of injury than your point, the soccer mom who's trying to get her post baby belly gone.
They I have a client, he is a firefighter, and when we went to the CrossFit games we just decided to randomly get into and won the damn thing. He was one of the winners, because we were pairs. We were all in pairs. It was a partner thing. And my partner was 60 years old, by the way, and we came in the top quarter. So uh, our ladies came in the top quarter, and then the firefighter and another former CrossFit competitor that I helped rehab. I can't say I rehabbed, post rehabbed from a torn quad when he was doing front squats and clean and jerks for reps during a CrossFit game. But those two won the whole thing. They were the top performers, and the firefighter responded to a call where a woman was leaving, again, middle-aged, just trying to get the belly off woman, leaving her CrossFit gym, and her legs were so destroyed by what they did that day. She took a step off a curve and lost all her teeth.
Oh,
Face first.
ow.
Yeah, American History X style.
Ow.
Yeah. CrossFit.
Yay.
Trademark. Don't sue us. Have you seen their website recently?
No.
So I went to go to their website to get those two things, because I think it was actually on one of our episodes here where it was they had on there life is random, so should your workouts be.
Oh,
Da, da, da.
yeah.
And I went there, and the original website wasn't there. It's all wokey stuff now.
Sounds about right.
Well, Greg Glassman refused to comment on any of the stuff because he's an asshole, but at least he was a neutral asshole. And finally, I guess he was an alcoholic, but he got drunk, and he tweeted out Floyd 19. And he lost his company.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But up until that point, he was just like, we're a workout system, we're we're not political, everything. But I guess he needed a breathalyzer on his phone, and lost everything.
There are some people that should do that, like a lock on your car.
I need one. Gosh. Sometimes I'll have like, so and so commented on your Facebook post, and I'm like, what Facebook post? Oh shit.
I just took it off my phone. All right. Well, hopefully we said something in there that was beneficial to people about, being discerning. Both in, if you're training yourself, if you're coming up with your own programs, you need some discernment and you need to think things through. Or if you're looking for a program to join or a trainer to hire, be discerning and think
Real Fitness and
through.
Performance YouTube channel.
Yeah, there's a good place to start for, all right, what do I look for in a trainer that is going to you need to steel yourself so you don't get caught up in the buzzwords.
Yeah, and that's actually the point of the channel. It's 3-part. It's if you want to DIY your training. I mean, obviously training is expensive. So there's a lot of information there. I'm not your trainer. I got the disclaimers.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see you. I can't work with you personally, but there's a lot of good information if you want to DIY. Second is if you're a trainer and you were like me when I first started, where they said, oh, we'll teach you everything. And then they just throw you in a gym and say, sell stuff. If you're that person, but you want to continue on the path, there's a lot of good information there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's starting from the ground up. It's not the complicated stuff we're talking about here. It's starting from, this is what you need to know in the beginning, and this is how you start.
This is a football.
Yeah. Again, it's for DIY people too. You have to start somewhere. And then the third is just being an informed consumer, because training is expensive and you want to make sure you're getting a good product.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of information there that anybody you're talking to that is trying to sell you something needs to answer to. Uh, but yeah, that's the whole point of it. And this we go over in the moment complicated stuff here just for fun, whereas that's starting from the beginning. It's the base knowledge, the variables of fitness, the principles of training. This is a starter program if you've never done anything, and this is why I do it the way I do. This is the next step, and this is why I do it the way I do. In fact, we were talking about going back to high rep. My suggestion would be something similar to my phase one.
All right. Well, oh, actually, before we leave, do you know the quote, "Gentlemen, this is a football"? Do you know that story?
The what?
"Gentlemen, this is a football."
Yes, I have heard it.
So for anyone who doesn't know, "Gentlemen, this is a football." That is one of the most famous and often used sports quotes in history. However, most don't know its real history or how to apply it to their businesses and lives. In July 1961, Vince Lombardi kicked off the first day of training camp for the 38 players on his Green Bay Packers football team. The prior season had ended in a heartbreaking loss to the Philadelphia Eagles after blowing a lead in the fourth quarter of the NFL championship game. When the players came in to start training camp, they expected to immediately begin where they left off and work on ways to advance their game and learn fancy new ways to win the championship in the new season. When they sat down and began, Vince Lombardi held up a football and said, "Gentlemen, this is a football." He then had everyone open their playbooks and start on page 1, where they began to learn the fundamentals.
And that's how we do, man. Take a step back to take a step forward.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just to review the fundamentals. Your body responds slower than your mind. You don't build a house in a day. And if you try to, then you're going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're out of shape, deconditioned, you didn't become overweight or obese in a day. It's not gonna undo it in a day.
I think it's actually more important to preach this to the advanced level people, because people who are out of shape and deconditioned know they're starting from a lower place. They
Mm-hmm.
understand that, they get it. Uh, the people who have had a lot of success tend to try to keep building on that success without taking a step back. And that's where those are the people that are really in danger of going and going and going till they can't and then being hurt. Success actually can be detrimental when it comes to understanding your own body.
I had that problem when I started because a few of my early clients were people who had been athletic in their youth and were now middle-aged, out of shape office workers, sit down all day. Okay, slow down. You're remembering what you used to do, but you can't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Gentlemen, this is a football. We need to go to page 1 of the playbook.
I had a memory show up on Facebook, and it was apparently bragging about a workout I had done. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, holy shit, I don't think I could do that right now. And it's really it's a mental process. I mean, I'm 43 years old. It's not like that was 12 years ago. So I was 31 when that happened. Maybe I can do it again. I actually considered trying it again, or at least working up till I could try it again. But at the same time, it's like you have to get into your head that we're not getting any younger. So be smart. Don't hurt yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
can still be badass without being as badass as you've always been.
Yeah, you can be badass in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that in mind, we will see y'all next time, where we will hopefully get farther in Crown of Swords than we did last time. And
Like
then,
you said before, the front side is always the hardest
yeah.
because there's so much information all at once.
Yep.
And maybe maybe Scott's got some ideas on how we can prioritize our attention too,
Yeah.
because
All
we
right.
still got more books to get through than we've gone
Oh, yeah.
through. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see y'all then.
Later.